There it is. Happy Friday, ladies and gents. Sometimes I wish things happen for me. Maybe artificial intelligence can help us with that. That's what we're going to be talking about today.
Skynet.
So stay tuned. Here we go.
Shut up and sit down.
The Business Bros Podcast was created for you. Learn from the business professionals who come to share their stories. Find out what's working in business and social media, what's hot and what's not, straight from the mouths of successful entrepreneurs out there doing the real work. And now, welcome to another episode of
Business
Bros.
Woo! It is time to bring the heat.
It is that time once again, ladies and gents. We've got a great guest lined up for you all right here on the Business Bros Pod. But before we jump into the show, a quick reminder to please subscribe on whichever platform it is that you're listening to us on. Give us a like, give us a follow, subscribe, and drop a review so that we can show up higher on search results and more business owners can get great knowledge and value out of our show. We'll sincerely appreciate that. Here comes the heat. Today's guest is an incredible thought leader and entrepreneur in the future of work. Our guest creates high-performing and empowered workforces, then enhances them through advanced technologies like artificial intelligence. She is passionate about and created her company in order to help organizations develop and realize transformational strategies, design professional development and employee engagement programs. I can really take some tips on that one, and help companies find the perfect balance between efficiency and innovation. Everybody can take some tips from that. So business owners, you will fall behind if you don't keep up with today's technology. You will not want to miss today's episode and your chance to hear from a pioneer. Joining us from Launch, welcome to the show, Rebecca Bennett.
Woo!
Man, I love that, guys. What an introduction. Thank you so much. Thank you, James.
Thank you.
Bow.
Thanks for
curtsy,
joining us.
Bow, curtsy, bow, curtsy. Rebecca, welcome to the program. Hey, James dropped a fire intro, but why don't you tell me a little bit about what's going on in your life these days?
Yeah, certainly. So about a year ago, I started a company called Launch, which is an AI consulting and solutions firm. And so basically what we do is when a business hears about AI and machine learning, they're like, ooh, what is that? I want to get my hands on it. It sounds interesting. And yes, everyone wants to get their hands on it and play with it. But the reality is that once they actually do, they're like, oh, this is complicated. This is hard technology. This is going to take time. This isn't just like I can get it up and running in 3 months type of technology. And so where we come in is we help them to devise a strategy on how to integrate AI or any kind of new emerging technology into their business strategy so that way that they can go forward on a better foot.
Man.
Okay, I'm gonna go first. Go for it. One of the big things that I worked on this year was automations, and just writing automations was hours and hours of when this happens, then this happens. When this thing does this, then this thing does this. How does AI function with automations, or does it take over what automations are supposed to do?
Yeah, definitely. So AI is a great tool to automate, automations, but it really takes it above and beyond. So automation is really just taking a process and making it repetitive and having a machine run it for you. And then there's a lot of instances on how that can be done. But where AI comes in is that it actually thinks about, well, not necessarily things, but from our perspective, it looks as if it's thinking about it and adjusting as it needs. So as we know, life is dynamic. Things happen that we don't expect. I mean, look at COVID. And so when you insert a process into a machine and then you use AI, it actually adjusts for the different anomalies or different types of situations that can come up. So it can spit out the best possible prediction, diagnosis, or answer or recommendation you're looking for.
So is it learning as it goes? Is that what you're saying? It's getting actually smarter as it works?
Exactly, just as like a human would. Mm-hmm.
So one of the automations that we have going right now, Nan, is the LinkedIn automation. We have a whole program going where LinkedIn this thing is finding connections on LinkedIn and sending messages. One of the things that I've noticed is that it doesn't necessarily differentiate between a good response or a bad response. Is this something that AI could help us with?
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, if it doesn't differentiate between a good or bad response, and if it has AI attached to it that's driving the technology, then it just means that it's newer. It doesn't have enough data to actually be effective, and it still hasn't learned what is good versus bad. You can program a good versus bad, like a couple of examples, into the machine so it has something to start with. And that's what we call input data. But when AI really takes off is when it uses training data. So that means you're getting user feedback back into the model so that it can actually improve. And this is where I see a lot of AI initiatives in businesses fail, is because they don't focus enough on what we call the AI consumption side, where users are actually trained and incentivized to give feedback into that system. We're great at producing the technology, but when it comes to consumption and actually getting AI into a useful, valuable place to be used in business, this is where it can take quite a bit of time to develop that learning.
I say, hold up, wait a minute.
Sorry, bro. I'm stealing your show a little bit because there's
cool, because this is your wheelhouse.
100%. So I'm the systems guy. Hernan is the idea guy. He gives me an idea, and I have to figure out how to make it work. That's my job, is how do I make it work? So when I hear AI and automations, all these things, I'm like, ding, 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 ding. This is the fun stuff.
Yeah.
So how much manpower, the data that comes in that you said, there, how did you call it? Data input or consumer input, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
How much manpower does it take? In other words, I'm a solopreneur. Can I get some kind of an AI system into the automations that I've created for my insurance agency, for example? And how much hours am I going to spend working on this AI system for it to learn what I need it to learn and differentiate good responses from bad?
Yeah, that's a great question. A lot of people, when they go in to adopt AI, that they have that very question: how long is it going to take for this to actually work and I can get value out of it? And so there's a couple of components that go into that response. First of all, when you're going to be using AI, you want to look at where you're getting a very large volume of data, enough data where you can actually pull trends from it. So a great source of data, for example, for your insurance company, would be your consumers or your customers. If you have a large number of customers in and you give them a way to give feedback into that system, whether it's a customer survey, something as simple as that, then that can be something that can help the AI. If it's something that like one individual is giving feedback, let's say yourself, and you're just trying to configure the system yourself, that's not going to work. It's you can code it to help. You can program it to for the good and bad responses, but it really needs a large volume of data. We're talking like over 1,000 pieces of data in order for it to identify any true trends that aren't anomalies.
So we're gonna need a team.
Yeah, gonna need a team. But I mean, it's not just about the quantity of data. A lot of it has to do with the quality of the data. You want to make sure that the data is valid. That, for example, if you have users, say, fill out, let's say, a Google survey on how satisfied they are with your insurance company, you have to make sure that they fill out a response that can be categorized. The data can be categorized in a very particular way. So this is where it's hard to get, say, free-form responses from users, and it's a lot easier for a machine to read, like on a scale from 1 to 5, how would you rate this? And they can select 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. A machine can read that a lot more easily. So that's what we're talking about, data quality. It has to be something that the machine can read. And when it's not, you can certainly work with free-form data, or unstructured data is what it's called. It just takes a lot more time to kind of clean that up, and generally you have to attach that to a system. So basically numerize the data, turn it from letters and words into numbers.
60% of the time, it works every time.
So then it sounds like you need a lot of stuff going into it. Who's your ideal customer then? Who are you looking for that can benefit from this type of AI?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's really 3 different types of objectives that a customer would want to achieve with AI. The first one, and the most common one I see, is a lot of CEOs wanting to boost the revenues of their company. So they'll use AI to try and do that. The second one is to reduce cost of a company. So this is just a matter of using AI to help a company create more efficiencies within the organization. For example, increasing employee productivity is one of them, having them not input the data themselves, but having the machine do that or do the number crunching. And then the last use case we typically see is using AI to collate and consolidate customer data into insights on what would make a really great new product. So for new product development would be the third use case.
So, for example, can you implement AI to operate within a system that you already use, a CRM, for example, or a management system that already has data that's maybe? And what I'm thinking about is easy links, James. For example, we are collecting a lot of information, whether it's policy changes direct from insurance companies or agents are changing information within the software. So there are a lot of data points that are going in and out of that particular management system, but that management system is proprietary to another company. Can use AI to kind of help facilitate some of that data and make it useful for whatever it is that you want to do in your company?
Certainly. Yeah. So a lot of the tools that are out there, like the CRMs that people are using, don't necessarily have AI already integrated into it because they came out before people were even thinking about this, and it became a hot item. So what companies are doing is they get their data from sources like those CRMs, but they're going to have to take that data and migrate it over into a platform that can actually perform the AI. So for example, the most popular ones that I can think of are AWS, Microsoft Azure, and in Google Cloud. Those are, I would say, the 3 top main companies that provide the hosting services to allow you to plug that data into a model that you create on their platform. And then from there, it's all about working the data, massaging it, and getting that model to work so you can get insights out of that.
And I know you mentioned how long it would take for somebody to set that stuff up themselves, but when you come in and help, implement some of these AI programs, how long are we looking at then to kind of get things set up?
Yeah, definitely. So if you're doing it on your own for the first time and you don't know what's going on, that could take you
forever.
A year or so. It's a steep learning curve. But typically what most organizations do is they try to limit their experimentation time, and they'll do this starting out with essentially a pilot program. And we recommend that pilot program not go any more than 6 months. You can spend years on AI and trying to perfect it and getting it to where you need it to be, because the reality is AI is not at the point of what we call general AI. And general AI is having AI literally act and think like a human for any kind of general use case. So AI really is at the stage where it can only work on a very specific or narrow type of use case. And so it's just we're so limited right now. The whole field has a lot to expand in and grow, and we're just not there yet. But typically, if you start with a 6-month pilot and you give yourself those guide rails, that time limitation, you can during that time assess, is this going to be a yay or nay? Is this going to be a green light and we can keep rolling with it, or should we shut it down and try something new?
So you're telling me that a company like Boston Dynamics doesn't have the capability quite yet, so that we have these machines coming after us Terminator style. The AI is not quite there yet, is what I'm hearing you say, right? I'm trying to put it in layman's terms, right? So that's what you're telling me right now. We're not quite there yet. Nothing to fear there.
Nothing to fear, nothing to fear. But also remember, AI is completely programmed by humans. It's still operated and managed by humans. Even if, let's say you're one and done with the model, you've created a model, it works great. Well, guess what? A year from now, it may not be the best model because, for example, with those developers who created it, did they ever think COVID was going to happen? No, it probably never even crossed their minds. So now all these insights are being derived. Maybe they're not necessarily true anymore. So you always have to go back to the model and maintain it and get new data inputs in it and training data. So it's constantly evolving with the world.
I mean, that's good to know because I don't want to freak out when, robots start taking over. But there's so many things that AI can do already. And we've seen it. And a lot of us think of it as magic, spooky, freaky stuff. Like, for example, I'll be talking about, I don't know, I got to go buy some shoes. And I open up my Facebook app and boom, shoes are showing up there. Like that is an example of AI kind of taking the information, the algorithms that we have on Facebook. The reason why I see this person's post on a regular basis versus this person's post, that's all AI controlled, right?
Yes. I mean, AI controls to an extent. So what in that case, so when you see the shoes ad after, say, you spoke about shoes to someone, really what it's doing, it's like a recommendations system. You can think of as a great use case of how AI works. And same thing like Netflix uses this as well to recommend movies to you. So it takes not only your profile information, say from your social media. This is why all companies want you to do the single sign-in through the social media so they can use that profile information to target you. But also kind of your behavior as a digital user. What are you looking at? What are you clicking on? What are you really spending more time on versus others? To, if you have an Alexa at home or a Google Home, what is it that you're talking about? It takes all those things into consideration and think of it as just like a word filter. Like everything you say, do is going through this filter, and all the words that pop up more versus less, those are going to make it through the filter. And then the AI is going to be like, oh, he really likes these types of shoes. Let's make sure we target ads that are tagged with this particular shoe size or this shoe brand or whatever it may be.
Did you watch The Social Dilemma yet? Speaking of Netflix,
no, I haven't.
No, you got to check it out. It's a lot of exactly what you're talking about. That filtering, and then you see these words, and it's a lot of people seeing more of what they look for. The more you see it, the more you see it.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're looking for it. Well, okay, so you said that for the most part, humans are controlling AI. So humans are programming, humans are controlling. But I'm going to go the other side and say, I am releasing more of what I do to automations, to things like Amazon, and to things like Alexa, to things like my phone, for example. I remember, something as simple as when I was growing up, I memorized my friends' phone numbers. And today I couldn't even tell you my daughter's phone number. Like, I don't know what, I know it's on my contact list, right? But I don't really have that. I used to ride around my neighborhood and I can tell you every single street and alley and nook and cranny in the entire, in all of IB, because that's where we grew up, where now I get lost. Like, I can get lost going to Walmart if I'm not taking the right streets. You know what I mean? Like, so I'm as a human, yes, humans are coding it, but at the same time, we're becoming so dependent on all these different types of things. Is there, like, do you see an end in sight, or are they heading towards where we think they're heading towards, that whole thought process of where AI is going?
To be honest, I do agree with you. I think we're taking technology further than we really need it to be useful to us as humans. I think we're at a stage where, we realized we can actually advance technology and make it work and do super cool things with it. So it's more just a matter of the question, well, what cool things can we do with technology, even if we don't really need it? And of course, businesses will always take the opportunity to see how they can monetize it. And so this is what we're experiencing as a society of consumers right now. And it can be kind of frustrating and like, who needs this or who needs that? And we don't necessarily see the value, but it's just people trying to monetize and experiment with what's out there. But understand that this is a process. These are stepping stones that are going to lead up to something bigger, greater, and better. You just have to work.
Fine by me.
I'm okay with that. Like I said, like growing up. So I was watching this video right before we got on the show today, and it was talking about movies that have predicted the future, right? And so they're talking about some cool stuff that has happened. Back to the Future made some awesome predictions. Jurassic Park working with DNA structures, and the Net with Sandra Bullock in the '90s predicting.
You're missing the biggest one though. The Simpsons.
The Simpsons is like Nostradamus, dude. That's totally a little bit different. But I remember watching the Jetsons. I'm still waiting for that, the car that folds up into the briefcase, or having the robot that cleans my house. And to this day, we still, even now we have robots that sweep up the house, right? Like we're heading in some crazy directions. You're in the industry. When you sit down and talk to other people who are in the AI business, you guys must take some stuff and go like, whoa, what if we can do this? And then start working towards that sort of stuff, right? Like that's where the concepts and ideas come from. Somebody has some sort of imagination and they think something up. And then people like you sit down and think, all right, well, how can we make that happen?
I'm still waiting for my Jarvis.
Exactly. Just talk to me, turn on the lights for me, and then do calculations.
I tried. So Alexa has this thing. Shut up! Don't listen. She has this thing where they are testing AI. Like there's these universities that are testing different AI programs, and so you can say something to Alexa and then start having a conversation, and it's growing its AI database, or those data inputs that you're talking about. So that stuff's all going on.
Yeah, it's all going on. And when there's this whole thing about data collection right now and privacy, there's been a huge push. Organizations realize the value. If you can collect the data, maybe they can't do anything with it now, but they know that they'll be able to do that in the future. And again, we talk about data quantity. If they collect that now, imagine all the historical data they're collecting. The advantage they're going to have is if they just started yesterday. And so this is why there's been such a huge push, because they know it's going to add so much more value into the future when we're able to see those longer term trends.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's where you were heading, was the future, right, Nan?
Yeah. Well, I'm blown away with what things are going. Example, right now we are live doing our Business Bro show. If you were to pull up the Facebook feed of us live, there are subtitles that you can come out, and they're pretty accurate. In live, Facebook understands me. If I had an accent, Facebook would understand me. If I spoke Spanish, Facebook would understand me, and it would translate stuff. Like the ability for us to do things with AI is like, it's mind blowing when you can really think about it. And yet here we are talking about, some of the simple tasks that we want to get done in automation. But I did want to ask you, and we went to that other section. When you sit down with people in your industry, and what kind of crazy stuff goes on? Do you stick to the projects that you're talking about, that you're working on, or does your group like kind of go into the future and kind of
go sci-fi?
Yeah, do you go sci-fi?
Yeah, certainly. It's always fun to go there. It's always good to have like those fun brainstorming sessions. We call them like the what if sessions. Like, what if we could do this, or what if we can do that? And there's no walls or barriers holding us back. But we always have to bring it back to reality on what's useful for the customer now, what's possible now. The problem with AI currently is that we do have a lot of the technology already in place, which is the cool, fun, and exciting part. We're capable of making a lot of these things we want to make, but it's not the capability as us as humans. It's actually all the infrastructures of society that is getting in the way. So when I'm talking about that, I'm talking about our governing structures, what governments allow versus what they don't allow. Having companies set up for, say, crisis situations like COVID. No one's set up for that before, so we just didn't think of that.
So we're limited by what we're allowed to do, is what you're saying. So the creativity. So theoretically speaking. So if Elon Musk set himself up on Mars and didn't have the governing structure that we have here in the U.S. and had his teams, they could do and start implementing many things that we're not allowed to do. Or maybe if we bring it back home here for a second, right? Maybe what you're allowed to do in the U.S., you're limited, but maybe you can go to another country that doesn't have those limitations, and you can take things to a whole nother level. Is that what you're talking about?
So bringing it back to that Jurassic Park conversation, since we mentioned that, Jeff Goldblum has this awesome line where he says, we got to this point where we can do all of these different things, but we never stop to ask ourselves if we should. It's kind of like the cloning. Cloning is one of those things, same type of technology that we have that technology available, but question is, should we? I mean, I don't know. My brain goes always to like Skynet and Terminator and all this stuff, and and that kind of worst case scenario if AI just really takes over. But I don't know. I mean, are we anywhere close to anything like that? I mean, is the technology even there? You're saying that the technology is there, but the government is holding us back from doing certain things.
Not necessarily the government, but I mean, I just would say society in general, like the restrictions that we impose upon ourselves. I mean, yeah, and no, of course, ethics is included in that, and that's exactly why they've created a ethics AI committee globally to help figure out, as these companies are developing these various AI technologies, what is the best way to use it? We're all very much in this experimental state right now, and there's no world standard for what's right or what's wrong. I mean, there's no world standard for what's right or what's wrong in a lot of different areas, not just AI. So this is an opportunity for this technology to bring the world together, have them create a standard of what's right and what's wrong, help finesse out those black and white areas, help finesse out those gray areas into something that's more acceptable.
And I want to give you some kudos because we took you on a crazy trip. I mean, we went all over the place. I mean, right now when you're talking, I was thinking, man, I just recently watched I Am Mother on Netflix. You watch that? It's a robot raising a kid. Like, I mean, that sort of stuff is nuts, right? And you start thinking about things like The Matrix, and that sort of gets crazy.
Raised by Wolves, that's a new one that's out right now.
And I haven't been able to see that because my Roku doesn't have HBO Max anymore. It's weird. But anyways. My point is, I mean, we took you on a huge tangent. I want to make sure we kind of bring it back to reality, and remind the audience real quick. Launch is not going to end the world with AI. We're not going to create robots. We're not implementing the 3 laws of robotics here, right? There's none of that stuff. Remind us real quick, what you're actually working on here in the real world.
You mean in terms of like the products that we're working on?
Yes.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah, so there is a product that we're coming out. We're super excited about it because there's nothing quite like it out there on the marketplace, and it's called AVA. It stands for Enterprise Intellectual Virtual Assistant, and I know that's a big mouthful. So what one can think of AVA is say like a digital assistant that can help an employee in the workplace do their job better. We don't see AI as a way to necessarily replace a human. I mean, yeah, automation will come into play and help take over certain tasks that no one wants to do. No one wants to do data input for their job all day. And that'll free them up to do more fulfilling things. They can go back to school, get reskilled, and end up doing things that really matter and are important to them. So essentially, AVA is there to answer any questions they have, whether it's about onboarding. So something like, who is my benefits provider? How do I get in touch with them? What is when are bonuses coming around, to helping them with their day-to-day, like who do I connect to, who can I connect to that can help me with vendor procurement, or are we using this kind of vendor? It's like simple questions. If you're in a large organization, like, this knowledge is scattered everywhere, and what we found through our interviews with companies is that it takes employees takes up 35% of their day to just in that knowledge search mode, looking for the knowledge that you're looking for. So if AI is able to help reduce that, imagine the level of productivity we can operate as humans, and we can get more done faster and have even more of an impact.
Oh man, to be able to do the research for you, to do the data entry for you, and then you can deal with the solutions and make decisions. That's huge. By the way, just one more time, because I couldn't help myself. What does AVA stand for?
Enterprise Intellectual Virtual Assistant.
That's a mouthful. Kind of reminds me of Strategic Homeland.
Strategic Homeland Intelligence. I don't actually remember.
We say SHIELD for short. I couldn't help it. I couldn't help it. Rebecca, hey, if people want to get information from you, can you let people know how they get a hold of you, especially for our listening audience?
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, personally, anyone can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm open to having a conversation. But if you want to learn more about our products, our AI solutions, and kind of what we do for businesses, you can go to our website, which is launchitspot.com.
Boom. Again, thank you very much for coming on the program today and dealing with all our craziness. I mean, we took you all over the place. We went to the future and back. Right? We went all the way prehistoric times, right? We went into the dinosaur era. So we were all over the timeline, and you rode the timeline like a champ. So thank you very much for coming on the program. Ladies and gents, make sure you check Rebecca out on LinkedIn. Automation is, I mean, a lot of the stuff that they're doing sounds so high tech, but you use it on a regular basis. And if your business is ready to operate at a new level, you want to check that stuff out. At least inquire, because you don't know what you don't know. And if you can sit down and at least talk to Rebecca about what you're doing in your business, she can advise you on at least where you should go based on where you are today. Rebecca, thanks a lot for coming on the show.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Take care.
All right, ladies and gents, just a quick reminder, make sure you subscribe, rate, like, follow. We appreciate that very much. And if you guys have any questions, hit me up on my social media at Business Bros Pod. I'd love to hear what you're up to. And of course, enjoy the rest of your weekend. That's all we got for you guys today. Peace.
Bye-bye.
And we're out.
Thank you for listening to the Business Bros Podcast. Are you looking to get more clients or to increase your income? Hernan, the business bro, can help you generate referrals through the power of podcasting. And James, the insurance bro with Pipeline Insurance, can help you effectively add insurance to your existing business. If you are ready to create wealth today and generational wealth for tomorrow, email businessbros@csfirst.com to schedule a free consultation. Or join the Business Bros Network, www.businessbros.biz.